And welcome into the WMAR Vault. I'm Jamie Costello. Here at WMAR, we're celebrating over 3/4 of a century on the air. We were the first TV station in Maryland, and now we're setting our sights on the future and streaming. And to that end, we're mixing up the old with the new, opening up the WMAR Vault and dusting off nearly 16 million feet of archive footage. That's enough to get us from Baltimore to Los Angeles and still have nearly 400 miles left over. We hope you enjoy this episode of the WMAR Vault.
Good afternoon, I'm Jackie Hall.
And I'm Susan White, and you've joined us for a special town meeting, one that deals with women and their stereotypes. The wife, the mother, the daughter, the woman in school, be she teacher, student, or parent.
The woman at work, typist, physician, household technician, mechanic, to name a few. Do all of these women have an understanding of each other that is basic to being born female? Is there a shared sensitivity conditioned by growing up in a male-dominated society?
Or, as we ask today when we discuss womanhood, is the common bond a lot of bunk?
There are stereotypes. Some of the stereotypes must be overcome. Other times, in other situations, the stereotype can be very comfortable, very useful. It can assist
What are some
the
of the
woman.
stereotypes that you refer to that you feel are good? And what are some of those that you feel are not so good?
Perhaps the stereotype of simply being female, of relating to a male as an opposite.
Where are we as women? Anyone?
I don't think we've come as far as sometimes we think we have. I, for one, was kind of shocked to find that in the most progressive states in the Union, New York and New Jersey, the ERA was defeated. And I spent a lot of time studying history, and I can't help but think that we really haven't come too far. And this, it seems to me, is one of the problems that all women face, and it's one of the things that working women particularly should be alert to, because they are the ones who see each other more often. They can communicate outside of the isolation of the household.
We have a tremendous force in politics, which we don't use. We have a great force in economics. They keep telling us that we have the control of the wealth. I'd like to find some of it, but in any case, they keep telling us this, and yet we don't use it effectively. And sometimes I get a little exasperated at our own women because they don't take advantage. They don't push with the things that they already have. And I think that's one of the explanations of why ERA failed.
Could we clarify for just a moment what ERA is, so that we're not throwing around the initials without understanding?
Equal Rights Amendment. Right.
Okay.
It has been passed and ratified here in the state of Maryland. I think we all understand that. But there are other states that have not.
I'd like to raise the question as to whether or not some of what is coming out might not reflect what we have been conditioned to as we have been growing up in our society. And when we speak about women not being more aggressive, or the fact that women do not take more advantage of, or the feeling that maybe we have gone too far, does this have anything to do with, and I'd like to hear some discussion on this, as to what happened to us as we were growing up in our families, when we were going to school, and as we entered into the working world?
I think it's like with any kind of young child. We all grew up thinking that daddy was everything. Mama stayed at home and she did the housework. And we stereotyped ourselves. And as we grew up, we fall back into these same habits. And it's good, bad, or indifferent. You grew up and you ate, and then you went to sleep. How many people go to sleep now or feel sleepy after they eat? It's just a habit. And you get to believing that all men are strong. And it's when you wake up and realize that you are the backbone and that you're the one who has to hold it up that it becomes very frightening.
Why do you think this is so? Because all of us, I think, many of us, have watched, growing up, our fathers go off to work and our mothers stay home and take care of the children. But our mothers, we watch them start early in the morning with the housework and getting the children off to school. We watch them work all day long with errands and shopping. Why didn't it sink in that the woman was really the one that was working a longer day?
Because we were told that's what they were supposed to do.
Yes.
That's West Mama's role. That's what she's supposed to do. We see her every day. Mama doing this. My mother
One of the
worked.
reasons some of us are not home doing that is because we looked and saw that that wasn't where the action was, that maybe that wasn't the role that we wanted for ourselves, and maybe we wanted a little piece of whatever daddy's role was.
Well, you know,
and so we
history
looked
has
at
sort of had it this way. When the women went across the plains,
They were out there just working with the men, tilling the soil and working, and then after a time when the men were settled, the women then went into the home to have the babies and to stay there, and it was just a pleasure for the man to come in, and she lived through her husband. And of course, as the years progressed, we saw the women, as the wars started, go out of the home and keep the home fires going by working and supporting families and being strong. And then as soon as the war was over, then they said, now you women go back in and let the men take all of the jobs. Right, and then you go back home and wait on them. And then somewhere along the line, the women decided, well, this isn't what we want, that there's more to it than that. There's nothing wrong with maintaining a home. Definitely it is a fine thing to do. But if you feel that you want to extend yourself and become occupied in other areas, this should be your right and your privilege.
I think you've made a good point when you say that there's a person should have a choice, though. And I think there is nothing wrong with being a person who wants to stay home and take care of the home, because the home and the family are really the foundation of our society. And if we have every woman going out having a career and saying, I don't want to be bothered with children, we're not going to have a generation to worry about that's going to come up.
Yes, but wouldn't it be nice if fathers were as interested in their children as the mothers traditionally have been? And I think the stereotype that has been damaging is the one which says that the woman's role is in the home, and that makes her inferior in some way. And I think by getting out of the home, we're saying we really don't want to accept that inferior status anymore.
And if we are in the home, then we are on par. That's what we're going to be saying.
But
Okay?
right.
Because they won't let you.
Ladies, we want to get more into the stereotyping because it's terribly important where it begins and why. We will do that after these commercial messages. Equal education and training, the elimination of sex role and cultural stereotyping. Why are stereotypes a matter of such concern? Where do they first begin? And how are these stereotypes perpetuated? How do they reflect on what we women make of ourselves? Let's get into this kind of discussion. Just where do the stereotype of the woman begin?
I have an example of where one began. A group of women in Baltimore, we started looking at children's books just as a way of entertaining ourselves as we were home with our children, and quickly discovered, we looked at all children's books by 5 major publishers and found out such things as 9 out of 10 heroes or heroines were heroes, not heroines. And the books might be fine, but they were all heroes. And as we looked at what the boys and the girls did in the books, we found that most of the girls were watching the boys play marbles or play with their wagons. Also, as we looked at the role of the mother and the father, the mothers in the children's book were not even being good mothers. We didn't see one drive a car, we didn't see one read a newspaper. They were all standing, watching, combing hair, standing at the sink, wearing an apron, doing very mundane kinds of things that even we as mothers didn't think were very interesting as being good mothers. And I think some of the stereotyping very subtly begins in those very first readers at ages 2, 3, and 4.
Girls are also not supposed to play the rough games. They have the boys playing football and basketball and baseball, and they have Little League, and the little boys maybe don't want to go to Little League. And you see, they're put into Little League when they're 5, 6, and 7 years old competing. And I think that's where they learn this competitive spirit. And the young girls are told that you're going to do the more feminine kinds of jobs, you're going to engage in the more feminine kinds of play. And you know, take for instance boys. If a boy would say that he wants to take ballet, oh, that's a taboo. You know, so this is a stereotype not only where women, but where men are concerned.
Now, what do you say to somebody that says that we're confusing children, that we're not allowing them to be typecast, and therefore they are unsure of what they are?
I think that as you get good role models within the home and in the society in general, the confusion disappears. And it is no longer completely frowned upon for a young man to study ballet, because there are some very excellent role models, including the fact that the football teams now go in for ballet exercises. But this is the sort of thing that happens, and I think it's happening with children as well. And I also think that there is a good deal of progress being made. You were asking about changes. Good deal of progress being made in the training of counselors in guiding young people into occupational choices, where there is now a much greater encouragement of women to go into engineering, computer sciences, and so on. Some of you in Baltimore will remember the hullabaloo about opening poly to girls. But this is a step forward, and a major step forward, and it is the kind of thing that we need to keep pushing.
All of us, I think, are becoming much more sensitive to the sorts of subtle expectations. The girl isn't going to be interested in the electronic thing, or the way the car works or something. We have made these assumptions, and we're finding that they're no longer true because we're no longer helping to perpetuate their truth. And the same thing is true for boys, because I think that liberation applies to human beings, and that includes men as well as women.
I feel very strongly that what we're talking about, and I'm hitchhiking on some other ideas here that have already been expressed, is the right of each individual to reach their potential, whatever that might be, and to be a human being. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about male, female, but what is it that enables you to be what you can be?
That's a very good point to end on. There are a great many more points that you want to make, but let's take a break and we'll come back after these messages.
By emphasizing women's roles, does the movement unintentionally perpetuate the sex role stereotyping it speaks out against? Should a priority of women's movement be in the education, and should the traditional roles kind of be pushed aside? What about housework? If it would become economically feasible that we could pay for such housework, would this be a good thing? And would more men jump into it then? Let's talk about that. Should we upgrade homemaking and housework?
I definitely go to work to get rest, because it seems like when I come home I have so much to do. Not only that, I have other things I'd like to do. In order to sandwich it all in, we do what we call a cooperation thing. My children come home, they do their homework. After that, we have to do the cooking. We have to clean the house. The mama has to go bowling. And that's all there is to it. Daddy doesn't always like it. But I have been married since I was 16 years old, and I feel that now that my children are grown, that I need a desire to be out among people, to identify with other people, for other people to identify with me. Because if I can't be myself, I can't be any good to anybody. And I feel if the more homes, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but if more families would feel this responsibility, total responsibility to the house, and we do our thing in the house, and when we go out, we do our thing out there within limitations, but when we come home, we can share everything we've got with each other. This to me is home, and this is the home of today. This is not where mama stays home all the time. She's got to get out. What happens when they grow up?
Let me ask you all something. Think about this and respond if you will. Women are asking for equal rights. Women want to be paid equally. Women want to be placed in jobs or positions that have only heretofore been held by men. When women are in the workforce and they are also married and they have children, how should they respond, if they're asked to work overtime? Should they say, I'm sorry, I have to pick my child up after school?
Yes, if it's necessary.
Well, how else
There's
they
no
gonna
other
cope?
way.
If they have to pick up the child after school, they have to pick up the child after school. And I think one of the problems that we have in an urban community is women who have to work and the community does not provide adequate daycare. Now that is a very serious problem that we have to face in Baltimore, because there are women who are alone, or sometimes their husbands earn so little that they can't pay the rent that is required for a decent environment for their children, and they're working not out of any love for work, but to survive in an urban community, and a lack of daycare facilities for children after school. And I'm not talking about preschool children. I'm talking about children after school is a very serious problem in Baltimore, because I meet this all the time, working with clients.
Well,
without the family unit, if you don't have a strong family, you are not going to have a strong country.
Right. But the liberation of women does not mean that you weaken the family.
Right. Women are, this is the important thing you have to remember. Women are the center of the family.
But when the
they
man
should take
and
pride
the
of it.
woman.
Right, and they should take pride in this, in
Of
being
course.
that.
But when they both are strong parents, you cannot be weakening the family. You see,
No,
the
right, I
liberation of
agree
women
with you.
does
I
not
agree.
mean that you're putting the men in a different kind of box. You're liberating everybody. Everybody is strong to reach their own potential, to be good parents. The children will have better role models then when both the father and the mother are involved in parenthood, and when they both have a good feeling of identity about themselves.
But you can't shirk the responsibility of the children.
Of course
you
not.
know.
But men have been doing this for generations.
I disagree with
No, I
the
disagree
comment
with
that was made earlier about what a woman's responsibility is to a job and whether or not she should work overtime if that's necessary. It seems to me that if we want equality, we're going to have to do the jobs in the same way that men do the jobs. And I agree that the family is important too. But if we make a contract with an organization or with a company to do a job for them, we're expected, and I would expect to do this job to the best of my ability. I don't think we ought to ask for any special compensation
considerations.
for being women, because if we do that, then we are selling ourselves short.
The lady here?
I disagree about
And now they're
that.
putting another burden on women by saying not only do you go out and work and then you come home, but also if they tell you to stay and work extra hours, or if you need to, you know, you must stay extra hours. So she's got all these guilts, you see. And I just think it's absolutely insane to pile more guilt and problems on women. Why can't society
as a
absorb
solution?
some of that and allow a woman to get home in time to pick up her children? Is she going to let them just stand on a corner?
I think personally this is a choice that we as women, people, persons, ladies, whatever we choose to be called, have to make, okay? If you choose to work and make $20,000 a year or $25,000 a year, just as Mr. Smith here, okay? You can't say, you know, hide behind your children and the dinner and all. And I agree that you cannot leave your children sitting. You know, you can't have empty pots and pans at home. But certainly I would think that this is a choice that we as women would have to make.
Sometimes, but there are so many divorced women and women who have children that they must take care of alone for other reasons, and they don't have a choice. They have to work in order for those kids to eat. And now society is not trying to help them in any way. They're saying, you stay here and do this job, get home at 7 o'clock, you don't know where the kids are, nobody's picked them up, they're roaming the street. That is just insane.
Let's take a break and come back. We're nearing the end of International Women's Year and, of course, a decade of the women's movement. Do you feel any differently about the movement today than you did, let's say, 10 years ago when it started?
Is it attracting new people that shut them out before?
I think that until the women's movement has been made more attractive to not only middle-class white women and educated women, but minority women and poor women from different areas. I mean, we need to learn how to associate with some of the women from Dundalk. We need to deal with the women who live in the inner city. And until we can make the women's movement attractive to them, we're not going to solve any of the problems that we all share as women.
Let me ask you one question, and we don't have much time to go into it, but I just want an overall response. Do you think men are threatened by the women's movement? Yes. Or don't you care?
They know. We're on our way. And we care, because men must be liberated too, and they must be free to express themselves in ways that have been blocked out in the past.
There's no alternative to men, so we've got to learn
it's
to
really
live together.
people liberation that we're talking about today.
But I think we also have to be cautious that we don't overemphasize. I think we have to be cautious that we don't overemphasize individualism to the loss of cooperation and group identity. Because if we all go off on our own, as someone said very early in this meeting, then we end up with chaos.
Well, ladies, thank you for having been with us.
I think one of the magic words of common bond is respect. I think women has to respect themselves as women.
And respect the men too.
And respect the men, and men has to respect us as women. Black should
We've been
Respect the
talking
white and white.
freely and openly for an hour about concerns that women have, not only as women, but as individuals. We've asked questions and found in the answers more questions. And that's what a town meeting is all about, bringing different attitudes out into the open, seeking a better understanding of issues, alerting us to what's been done and what we can do still.
Task forces have already been organized to deal with the 8 issues on the Maryland Women's agenda, and these groups will continue to act in the months and years ahead. The events of International Women's Year have heightened the awareness of many to the concerns of women, just as it has prompted us to ask, womanhood, is the common bond a lot of bunk?
We thank all of you in the studio for sharing in our town meeting and for all of you out there for joining us. I'm Jackie Hall along with Susan White. Good afternoon.
For nearly a century, WMAR has brought the news into your home. From film to video to tiny digital cards, over the air, cable, satellite, now here we are streaming. We'll keep moving forward and remember to look back at the stories and the moments that made us all Maryland. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the WMAR Vault. We'll see you next time. Hey, it's Jamie Costello. If you just enjoyed this episode of The Vault, you can check out more episodes by clicking on this box down here. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that circle, and that'll subscribe you to WMAR2 News for great content every single day.